Welcome back to your free Windows 7 training course. In this video, I will look at DirectAccess. Nowadays, a lot of users are mobile or work from home. In order to communicate with the office, they often will create a VPN connection back to the head office. This requires the user to establish a connection back to the office through either a Windows VPN connection or using third-party VPN software. DirectAccess is a new feature in Windows 7 that allows you to automate the process of connecting back to the office. Using DirectAccess, the computer transparently connects back to the corporate network with no interaction from the user. They don't even have to enter in a password. In order to use DirectAccess, you need to be running the Enterprise or Ultimate Edition of Windows 7. With DirectAccess, you can determine who can use DirectAccess and also which servers they can connect to. DirectAccess also supports NAP, or Network Access Protection. NAP is a system which performs a number of compliance tests on the computer before it is allowed on the network. These compliance checks can involve ensuring virus software is installed and enabled, a firewall is operating, and the latest Windows updates have been installed. If you have NAP configured on your network, DirectAccess will first check with NAP to make sure the computer is compliant before allowing it on the network. DirectAccess requires IP version 6 and IPsec to run. Even though IP version 6 support is improving, a lot of networks still don't support IP version 6. To get around this, DirectAccess supports IP version 6 transition technology. If the transition technology does not work, which may be due to firewalls between you and the corporate network, DirectAccess will use IP over HTTPS. HTTPS uses a very common port and should be open on most firewalls and also will run over the IP version 4 networks. To start using DirectAccess, you need to meet quite a lot of requirements. First, you need on the back end to be running Windows Server 2008 R2. Unfortunately, Windows Server 2008 does not support DirectAccess. You also need a Windows Server 2008 or 2008 R2 domain controller and DNS infrastructure. On top of this, you also require a public key infrastructure. This will provide the certificates used by DirectAccess to create the IPsec connection. If you have all this on your network, then you're also going to need to install a second network card on the server on which you want to run DirectAccess. One network card is used to access the public network, while the other network card is used to access the corporate network. As you can see, there is a lot of infrastructure required to run DirectAccess. Once all this infrastructure is in place, you next need to configure your IPsec policies and IP version 6 transition technologies. There is a lot that goes into DirectAccess, but before I go through showing you how to configure a client to use DirectAccess, I am first going to look a little bit closer at how DirectAccess works. When your computer starts up, it checks to see if it is connected to the corporate network. It does this by trying to connect up to the company resources like a DNS server. In this case, it will succeed, since it is directly connected to the corporate network. If I move the computer out of the corporate network and connect it to the internet, the computer will no longer be able to access the company's servers directly. Since the computer cannot connect to the company's network, it will now automatically attempt to connect to the corporate network using DirectAccess. If the client is using a public IP version 6 address, it will be able to connect directly to the DirectAccess server using the IP version 6 network. If the client is using an IP version 4 address, it will then attempt to connect using a 6-to-4 connection. 6-to-4 does not support NAT, so if you are behind a NAT device, DirectAccess will then use Teredo, which can travel over IP version 4 NAT devices. Lastly, if all else fails, maybe you're behind a firewall, DirectAccess will attempt to use IP HTTPS to make the connection. Now that you understand how DirectAccess works, Let's have a look at how you would configure it. First of all, I will look at configuring DirectAccess using Group Policy. To do this, open Group Policy from the Start menu by running gpedit.msc. From Group Policy, expand down through Computer Configuration, Windows Settings, and then to Name Resolution Policy. From here, select the option DNS Settings for DirectAccess. For DirectAccess to work, it needs to be able to contact a DNS server on your network. Once I enable DNS settings for DirectAccess, I can add some DNS servers that will be used with DirectAccess. These servers need to be accessible from the Internet. If you don't want to have your DNS servers directly connected to the Internet, you can set up a proxy server and access the DNS server that way. If you want additional protection, you can tick the tick box, Use IPsec in communication between the DNS client and the DNS server. This is, of course, if you have your DNS server configured to use IPsec. DirectAccess does require IP version 6 to work. Even though support for IP version 6 is improving, the fact is that in most cases when you are out and about, you won't have a complete IP version 6 network between you and your office. To get around this, DirectAccess does support transition technologies for IP version 6. To configure these, go to Administrative Templates, Network, TCP/IP Settings, and IP version 6 transition technologies. In here you can see the settings for IP version 6 transition technology. Hopefully the transition technology will allow DirectAccess to connect back to your office. Group policy is one way that you can configure DirectAccess. You can also configure DirectAccess using NetSH. Generally speaking, you will want to use NetSH in scripts or when you only have a few computers to configure. If you have a lot of computers to configure, you are best off using group policy. But NetSH can also be useful for troubleshooting. Just remember that if you use group policy, this will overwrite any settings configured with NetSH. To use NetSH, first open a command prompt with administrator rights. The first command I want to look at sets up the Teredo client for use with DirectAccess. This command simply sets the IP address of the Teredo server that you want to use. The next command configures the IP address of the 6-to-4 relay if you have 6-to-4 configured for your network. Lastly, you can always configure HTTPS to encapsulate the traffic for you. This command will add the address to your HTTPS server. Once you have configured your DirectAccess client, you can also use NetSH to troubleshoot problems. The first command I want to look at is NetSH namespace show policy. This command shows the name resolution policy table that is configured on this computer. Name resolution is important when using DirectAccess. If your computer cannot contact the DNS servers at your office, it will not be able to set up its DirectAccess connection. This command does show the settings currently configured for the name resolution policy, but this does not mean that these are the settings that are currently in use. The next command shows the effective policy. This command shows you all the settings on the computer that are currently being used. In this case, the command is telling me that if this computer was set up on the internal corporate network, then DirectAccess would be disabled. If you are sure that you have configured the settings correctly on the computer, run this command to find out which settings ended up being applied. If you are using HTTPS to make a connection back to your office, run the NetSH command HTTPS tunnel show interfaces. This will show you the current state of the DirectAccess HTTPS connection. The next command, Teredo show status, shows you the current Teredo status. If you are using Teredo, this command will help you determine if Teredo is working correctly. the same command exists for 6 to 4. This command will show you the status of 6 to 4 and thus hopefully help you troubleshoot any problems. In order to start using DirectAccess, you also need to configure Windows Server 2008 R2. That topic is beyond the scope of this course, but hopefully you have learned enough in this video to start troubleshooting DirectAccess problems on your network. In the next video, I will look at mobility options in Windows 7. With more and more people working away from the office or at home on a regular basis, understanding the new features that Windows 7 has in the way of mobility options is an important skill to have. For more free videos, please check out our web page or YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.